Okay, hello everybody. So this live stream, we're looking at academic IELTS writing task 1. And I'm going to show you a question. I'm going to get you to attempt it. And basically, I'm going to tell you what mistakes you're making. So that's the purpose. It's all about giving you feedback. So you look at the question, give it a shot. I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. Based on what you're doing wrong, you will know what you need to work on to improve your scores. So I'm not necessarily teaching you how to write an essay, but I do have lessons that I made where I've done that already. So this is my complete academic IELTS writing task 1 guide. There are links for YouTube or Facebook, depending on which platform you prefer. So if you're not already aware of what you need to do and how you write a task 1 essay, you should check those out. Hi, Leo. You got here good and early. I'm very well, thank you. Hey, Sharon Preet, good to see you here. Hi, Mark, good day to you. Humera, hi Humera, good to see you here. And Leo, you got in good and early today, Leo. You got in very early. Hey, Dahlia, good to see you here. Okay, so this lesson is for academic IELTS task 1. That means if you're doing general training task 1, this lesson isn't any use to you. In fact, it would probably just confuse you. You'll be learning about things you don't need to learn, and you could go study vocab or grammar or something else instead. So this is only for academic IELTS students. Pete Wing, hello to you. Welcome to the lesson. Hey Sharon, good to see you here. Okay, so that's what's happening. Hi Jawad, good to see you here. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're looking at a task 1 question. So first thing I want you to do, let me just pull up my instructions for you here. I want you to tell me, how do we analyze this question? So here's the question. How are we going to analyze this? Pete, doing good, doing very well. Thanks for asking. Okay, so how are we going to analyze this question? So this lesson, this question would make a lot more sense to those of you who have completed my task 1 lessons. But basically, when we're analyzing the question, and specifically what we're looking for is how are we going to organize the categories and the data when it comes to writing our overview. So we're going to start by analyzing it. And in what way do we analyze it? So are we going to look for the highest and lowest values, or are we going to look for increases and decreases? So those are our options. Are we going to look for highest and lowest, or are we going to look for increases and decreases? Dahlia says increases and decreases, and that is exactly right. So let me just show you why that's the case. So it's over time. So we have 1950 to 2000 to 2050. So what we want to do is we want to look at which categories have increased and which categories have decreased. So let's say if we look at, it's a little bit there. Sorry, let me just get up a black pen. It's easier to see. Okay, so if we're looking at the blue category, it's 44% here, 39% here, 27% here. So what I like to do is draw a little arrow next to the blue category just to indicate that it has in fact decreased. Next, we'll look at the red one. So 51% to 54% to 57%. So that is an increase. And then the yellow category. So we're going to say 5 to 7 to 16. So that's also an increase. Okay, perfect. So that's essentially the basics of it. Before we continue, can you just tell me what have I missed? What did I miss here? Hey, Rupender. Sharon, the font is too small, kindly enlarge. It's difficult to fit everything in. This is a big part of why I didn't want to, why I was avoiding doing why I was avoiding academic task 1. It's just so much to fit on the screen. All right, that's the best I can do for now. Okay. So back to my question. Which I'm after missing something. So can you tell me, what did I miss? What did I miss here? Anybody? So I said that the blue category decreased, the red increased, and the yellow increased. So what have I missed? Ah, very good. So 2050 is a prediction. So we need to keep the prediction separate from the current. So this is in the past, 1950 to 2000. So this has already happened. And then 2050 is a prediction. So we have to keep them separate from the times in the past. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to analyze that separately. So we'll say, in the same way, 51% to 54%. So that was red had an increase. And then the prediction is 54 to 57. So further increase. Looking at yellow, 5% to 7%. So that was an increase. And then 7% to 16%. So a further increase. Good. Then 44% to 39%. That's a decrease. And then 39 to 27, further decrease. Okay, so what I've done here, I've put 2 arrows next to each category. The first arrow representing what happened already, what happened in the past, and the second arrow representing the prediction. Okay, very good. So, are we happy with that? Is everything okay now? The population, says Dahlia. Excellent. So very important as well. And students will often, or candidates will often miss that. So when most of the information is all in the same place, students will often overlook the fact that there are extra pieces of data in another part of the chart. But these are absolutely essential. We can't avoid these. We can't ignore these. If we didn't refer to the fact that 2.5, 6, and 9 billion are on our chart here, we would not be able to get a good score. So you can't pick and choose what you talk about. You need to include everything. So whoever made this chart felt that it was important. Therefore, we also need to address it. So 2.5 to 6. So that was an increase already in the past. And then 6 to 9. So we're also expecting an increase in the future. Okay, good. So that there is our question fully analyzed. Sharon, good. I think we're going to have to shrink it back down a little bit later once we start putting the answer in. But yeah, good. Good. Thanks for asking as well. Dahlia, perfect. Hi, Cameron Beck. A picture Chris Pell. Hope will not get you the score you need. Hard work and preparation. I can't read it properly. Naomi. Hey, Naomi. Okay. I actually know Chris very well. I've known Chris for a long number of years. So we go back a long way. We used to work together in British Council. Okay, so that's our question analyzed. And from there, we need to write the paraphrase. So please go ahead, write your paraphrase, share it with me in the comments, and I'll have feedback for you based on what you've written. Okay, so you see the instruction at the top of the screen. Write the paraphrase. The three pie charts illustrate the population according to different age groups in 1950 and 2000, because they're separate from the prediction. So in 1950 and 2000 and predictions for 2050. Good. Cameron Beck, should we use all of the number in our essay? Yes. Yeah, you will have to refer to every category. That doesn't always mean that you need to state every figure, and it just depends on how many categories there are, but you do need to refer to everything. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to take Sharon Preetz here and I'm going to add it. But for those of you who have not shared your answer yet, who have not shared your paraphrase yet, please do. So what we'll do is we'll build up our answer here on this side. Okay. Three pie charts illustrate the population according to different age groups in 1950 and 2000 and so if you want to use predicted and what they are predicted to be in 2050, or we can say and predictions and predictions for 2050. Okay, so Sharon Preet, that works. Let me jump back in and see if anybody else has added their paraphrase to the comments. Oh, quite a few. Good. Okay. Dahlia, the pie chart illustrates, you need illustrates in subject verb agreement, but also this is pie charts, so it should be plural. So the pie charts illustrate the number of people divided by age group for the years 1950, 2000, and also for the future in 2060. Now, this you might feel is a small mistake, but right here it says 2050. So maybe it's the screen, maybe you're working off a small screen. So maybe this isn't something you need to worry about in the real test. But that one mistake saying 2060 instead of 2050, that could bring down your task achievement score. Or that would bring down your task achievement score. So no matter how good you do from this point on, you're stuck at a band 6 for task achievement with inaccurate data. You can't have any inaccurate data throughout the whole thing. So I don't know if that's because the screen is too small, because I can't find software to share everything that big at the same time, but that would be a significant mistake there. So you need a capital T at the start. So with a capital T. The chart's given delineate. You just say show, just say illustrate is fine. The proportions plural of the population by 3 different age groups in the years 1950 and 2000, as well as predictions for 2050. So the problem here with this is you've copied too much. So this as well as predictions for 2050. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words in a row you've copied. You want to avoid that. It's okay to copy some words, but try to avoid copying a long string of words in a row like that. How can I score 7 band in writing in my first attempt? I got 6 in writing. How you can get a 7 the first time is to prepare yourself, to be very honest. Because what happens with most students, most candidates, is they'll go do the test, see what happens, and then fail, and then find out, try to find out why. Or in some cases, students will just continue repeating the test over and over again and continue to fail until they give up. You need to find out what you're doing wrong. So it could be your task achievement, it could be your vocab, it could be your grammar, it could be your coherence and cohesion, it could be your task 1, it could be your task 2. So you need to find out what you're doing wrong and then address that, so that's how you do it. Rupender, the given pie charts illustrate the change in population in terms of, it wouldn't be in terms of, it would be in relation to age groups in 1950 and 2000, along with predictions for 2050. Predictions for after 50 years? No. Because the predictions would be in relation to now. So you'd have to say, and predictions for, 28 years in the future. It would be clearer just to say 2050, but to say 50 after 50 years is not accurate. Yeah, that made sense. I partly guessed that, Dahlia, but still, that the impact of that mistake, if it happened in the real test, is more what I was describing. I had a feeling that was the case. Try turning your phone sideways as well if you haven't already. Sharon, the charts illustrate the number of people grouped in years in the year 1950 and 2000. People grouped in. Now, grouped in years sounds like the year, like 2050, 2020, but it has to be grouped according to age or in age groups. So that saying years here doesn't communicate the information accurately. And then with predictions, it has to be plural. So with predictions for 2050. Jishan, hello to you. Welcome to the lesson. Can we replace prediction with forecast? Yes. And forecasts for 2050. Yep, that'll be fine. How about the projections for, and projections for 2050? Let me just see what you're referring to here. And projections for 2050. Yep. Yeah, that's fine. Deep. Good. Cameron Beck, can we use the past, can we use this part phrasal verb in order to get high score? If you're using the word accurately, phrasal verbs, what phrasal verb? What phrasal verb? I think you should focus more on communicating clearly. Like, are you using the word that accurately communicates the idea? So that should be more your concern. Okay, so we've written our paraphrase. Next, I would like you to write your overview and again share that with me in the comments. So with the paraphrase, it's time to go to the overview, and we've already analyzed the question. So you can use those arrows on the screen to help you with that. And while you're writing the overviews, let me share some information with you about my free live feedback lessons on Zoom. So those are my group classes on Zoom. They are 3 times a week for task 1 speaking and task 2. So if you have not already signed up for those, you can sign up with this link. I also have one-on-one services, one-on-one feedback, one-on-one support. So you can access those from the same link. So if you're finding it difficult to get the scores you need without expert guidance, then that's available for you too. Okay, so Sharon Preet, overall in 1950, there was the lowest population and the figures had increased in 2000. In future, it is predicted that it will peak for all age groups. So we don't know if it's peaking for all age groups or not. So that information isn't there. Also, the word peak, let me see here. This is a peak. So a peak is when it goes up and comes back down like the top of a mountain. So for something to just go up, that's not a peak, that's the highest point. It's only a peak when it comes back down again. So when it has that shape. Also, we're looking for increases and decreases, so don't worry about it being the lowest in 1950. And then the final issue with your overview, Sharon Preet, is that you have focused entirely on these figures, 2.5, 6, and 9. But you can't just focus on the figure for the population. You need to focus on the figures for the age groups as well. So basically, you have to think of it like there are 4 categories. There's the blue one, the red one, the yellow one, and then we'll call this the black one because it's just the black font or the total figures. So you can't ignore blue, red, and yellow in your overview. You have to refer to all of them. So that overview you've written is not appropriate. That's not going to help you get a good score, unfortunately. Rupender. So the first word is overall. Overall, it is evident that youngsters aged between 0 to 19. Don't worry about saying youngsters. Just go for the facts, really. Don't worry about giving the category a new name. Have decreased, whereas the opposite trend is witnessed with the 20 to 24 age individuals in 1950 and 2000. Okay, so this time, let me just look at this again. All right, so of all the data we've looked at, you've referred to this arrow here and this arrow here, right? So you've essentially given us 2 points, but we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 important pieces of data, and to give a clear overview, you need to refer to all 8 of those. So basically, like imagine that the person reading this cannot see your chart. Basically, all they know, all that you've given them is what happened here, what happened between here and here, and what happened between here and here. So like your overview has to encompass all of this, but what you've done is included this. So it's a very small section of the total. So this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and these ones you haven't spoken about. So unfortunately, that overview is not suitable. That's not going to help you get a good score. Rupender. Okay, well, the forecast that by 2050 population of given category will rise. Okay, so basically what I've said, except the added fact that you have mentioned this one. So there are still all the other figures that you hadn't mentioned, but you did include one extra one. So no, that doesn't work. You have to be able to refer to all of the aspects of the graph in your overview. You have to refer to them. Even if you're not mentioning each and every one of them, you do need to infer what's happening. Okay, Sharon Preet. So first of all, you got punctuation mistakes here. Overall has to start with a capital O, and at the very end, there should not be a space before your full stop. There should also be a comma before whereas. Okay. Overall, there were some increases noted in 2 age groups between the 2 years. So again, you have to say which age groups. Your overview is to help me visualize what's happening in the graph. And if you just say 2 age groups increased, I don't know which ones you're talking about. It's not between the 2 years, because remember at the start of the lesson we said you have to keep the predictions separate from what happened in the past. So you'll have to refer to what happened between 1950 and 2000 independently, separately from what happened between then and the future, or between now and the future prediction. So that doesn't work. One age group was seen, and whereas the decrease in one group was seen, and in the predicted year an increase was in 2 age groups and a decrease. So unclear when you're not giving us the name of the categories. And it seems also, Sharon, that you did not refer to these total figures at the bottom. So it got a little bit unclear because of language mistakes, but it still seems like you didn't mention those. So again, that doesn't work. Oh, you have an extra bit here, the number increase. So you'd have to say the population. The total population would have to be what you're saying there. Okay. Sharon Preet. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take one from each student, because I want to be fair and give everybody feedback. So I'll just take your first attempt, Sharon Preet. But based on that, you know what you've done wrong. I mean, you know what mistake you've made based on what I told you. So as long as you understand that mistake, that's fine. Okay, so Dahlia. Overall, the first age group. Now, does the reader know what the first age group is? So you have to consider the shared knowledge here is you have to write your answer under the assumption that the person reading your answer will not have access to the graph. So they should be able to understand your answer without needing to look at the graph. So when you say the first age group, well, I don't know what age group that is. I can look at the graph and I can find out, but the information should be in your answer. So that's not appropriate. The first age group in blue, again in blue, I don't have the graph, so that doesn't help. You need to tell me. Show that young people have been decreased between the years. So that's just past simple. You just need to use past simple between the years 1950 and 2000. So here you've made 3 attempts at saying the age group 0 to 19. You said the first age group, you said in blue, and you said the young people. So you've basically you've tried to rephrase the name of the group. You've had 3 attempts at rephrasing it. You should just use the name of the group. Say that the 0 to 19-year-olds would be perfect. Okay, so they decreased between 1950 and 2000, and even for the prediction for 2050. So not even, it would be and again are expected to decrease by 2050. Although the second and third groups, orange and yellow, have presented a big increase in adults and older numbers. So again, you're renaming the categories. That's not clear. In the same years and in the future 2050. Okay, so Dahlia, what you have included here is this. Now, if you would just copy the names of the age groups 0 to 19, 20 to 64, and 65 plus, that would be far better than what you've written. But you've left out this bit here. So the 2.5 billion, the 6 billion, and the 9 billion you have not referred to. So this is probably the best attempt so far in that you've included more than anyone else. Language errors are problematic, and you didn't include the totals. So that doesn't work. Okay. All right. Should I write an overview for you? Or does anybody else have another overview they want to share? Do you know what? Let's take Dahlia's and I'll just fix that one up. Okay, so okay, so overall the 0 to 19 year olds decreased between years 1950 and 2000, and this trend is expected to continue until 2050. Okay, so that's the first category we've done. So that's our youngest age group. Now we need to move to the next one. Okay. Although the second and third groups, orange and yellow, so increase older numbers in the same year. Okay, so if you're going to say although, the word although indicates that there's something different coming. So I'd say, like, let's say if red increased in the past and is predicted to decrease, we could say although it increased between 1950 and 2000, it is expected. So although is when there's the opposite thing happening. So although isn't appropriate. So you know, I'm just going to start fresh. For the other age groups, 20 to 64 and 65 plus, let's put in a cohesive device here because this is the opposite situation we've described with the youngest category. Okay. In contrast, for the other age groups, 20 to 64 and 65 plus, they increased from 1950 to 2000 and are shown to increase further by 2050. Okay. Now, there's a problem here with my description. So, okay, we need to include the 25, the 2.5. We still need to refer to these figures here. But there's something wrong with my description in that it's not accurate. So can anybody tell me what's wrong with what I've written? Why is this overview inaccurate? Why is this description in my overview inaccurate? Anyone? If you don't know, just say I don't know. That's just as good, and I can show you. But if you'd like to have a go at it, that would be better. So the description is not accurate. There are units of measurements. You're on the right track. You're on the right track. So it's the description of the measurement. Add total population for each year. Definitely. We definitely need to do that. Okay. So the problem here, not mentioned units. We don't. Yes. that's actually exactly it. So that's the problem we're facing here. So when we're looking at this, it went from 5% of the total to 7% of the total. So we can't necessarily say that they decreased. We want to say that it was the percentage that increased or decreased. So we're going to go back in, and I'm just going to make that more accurate to describe what the chart is showing. So overall, the percentage of, there we go, 0 to 19-year-olds decreased between the years 1950 to 2000, and this trend is expected to continue until 2050. In contrast, for the other age groups, 20 to 64 and 65 plus, say the figure, just to mix it up, the figure increased from 1950 to 2000. Figures increased from 1950 to 2000 and are shown to increase further by 2050. Okay, so now we just need the final part here. And again, remember, we have to describe them separately. We have to keep the future separate from the past. So we'll just say the total population also increased. So we're saying also here because it's a comparative essay, and it says make comparisons where relevant. So if we say also here, we're referring back to the fact that these two categories we just discussed here. We talked about these increasing, so now we're talking about the total population also increased, and the forecast for 2050 shows a further, did I already use that phrase, further increase? I did. Shows another increase. Okay. So that there is our paraphrase and overview written. Does anybody have any questions about that? Does anybody, oh, spelling mistake. Does anyone have any questions? Does anybody not understand it? Does anybody want to, does anyone have any questions basically? Okay. So compare what's on the screen to what you wrote and see how that overview includes all of the categories. So essentially we had 8 categories because we had to keep the future separate from the past, the prediction separate from the past, and then we had the total population as well as the age groups. Okay, so we're not going to have time to finish this essay completely, but I definitely want to see your attempts at writing a paragraph. Now, how will we organize the details paragraphs? So we want to write 2 details paragraphs. What would you suggest we include in the first details paragraph, and what would you suggest we include in the second details paragraph? Okay, Rupinder. And first comparison between 1950 and 2000, good. And then the predictions in the second one. Definitely the most logical approach. That's exactly what I was thinking. Start first with the lows, age 19, second paragraph, and highs 20. There's more than one way to organize it, and as long as it's logically organized, that's fine. But remember that we need to keep the past information separate from the future, the predictions. So that way you'd have to do 0 to 19 in the past, 0 to 19 in the future, then the total in the past, total in the future. Yeah, it would work. That would work. Yep, that's fine. I personally prefer rupenders. I think it's just tidier. Do everything about the past than everything about the future. But this is not wrong, and you would still get a high score with this. And for second paragraph, 20 to 50. Okay, excellent. So we're going to go with Rupender's idea in the first comparison between 1950 and 2000. So that's what I want you to do next. I want you to write that details paragraph about 1950 and 2000. I'm not sure if you can hear the funeral music in my microphone. Bing Wing, you're probably familiar with that. If you can hear it, I don't know if my microphone is picking it up or not. Also, as well, while you're writing that paragraph, let me just remind you what else is going on here. So I have the live feedback lessons on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday this week. So those are the ones on Zoom. So I already shared the link with you to sign up for those. So that link there, you can sign up for those. Or the one-on-one feedback. Also live streams on YouTube and Facebook. So I have another one tomorrow for speaking on Wednesday for the essay correction competition. So you'll find a post from Sunday where you can enter that. So you write a full essay. I will choose one winner and give them a full essay correction. I have my IELTS speaking practice lucky draw. So again, just put your name under that post that I made on Sunday. And then finally this week is my Task 2 live stream on Thursday. So still a lot of feedback coming for all of you. Okay, Rupinder. In 1950, 51% of, you have to have the preposition, of people were from, but put that the other way around. So no, 51% of people were in the 0 to 19 group, and less than half belongs to 20 to 64 aged. Less than half is too vague, because remember, the person reading your answer will not have the chart in front of them. So less than half, I mean, technically less than half could be 10%. You know, I'm assuming it's closer to that, but you need to give the percentages. I mean, I guess you could say slightly less than half. Where's only 5%? Is that accurate? Your percentages are wrong, are they? Am I wrong? No, they're wrong. So the blue category is 0 to 19, so that should be 44%. And then the red category is 20 to 64. So you're after mixing up the blue and the red categories. You're after reporting the wrong data. Again, that small mistake, that's enough to stop you getting a good score. I mean, if you're aiming for a band 7, you can't make mistakes like that. So instantly, even though you haven't finished your paragraph, you're after that's enough. That's enough to not get your scores. That mistake could potentially stop you getting your scores in the IELTS test. Now, Rupinder, if you're aware that you make that type of mistake, that should be the very first thing you check when you're proofreading your answer. Before you check your grammar or your vocab, you should be checking for the data, because if you're prone to making that type of mistake, you know, you could really end up failing on account of that. Okay, starting off with the age group 0 to 19 years old, it can be clearly seen that after a century, well, a century is 100 years, and we're talking about 50 years, so that's inaccurate. Again, that's enough to damage your score. That could potentially stop you getting the scores you need. Half a century, but again, just say which years between 1950 and 2000, because you know you're not looking to write your essay from the perspective that you're showing off your vocab. You have to write your essay from the perspective of somebody has to read this and imagine what the graph looks like based on what I've written. So if you're saying after a century, like, well, which year does it start in, which year? So saying from 1950 to 2000, very clear, and the reader will know what you're talking about. But if you're, I know you're trying to improve your range of vocab, but it shouldn't be at the sacrifice of communication. So communication is by far the most important. Okay, there's a marginal decline of their population. It should be of their percentage by 5%. On the other, so is that correct? Let me just check the data here. So 44 down to 39. Okay, so it's accurate. But again, you're giving me no point of reference. So I'm trying to imagine what the graph looks like, and you're saying it decreased by 5%. But if I don't know what it started at, then how do I know how significant that is? So if you say, like, it started at, let me see, what was the figure? 44. So if you said to me, in 1950 it was 44%, but fell by 5% by 2000. So you give me the 44 and I know, okay, it fell by 5%. But if you just say it fell by 5% and I don't know what it started at, then how am I going to imagine, did it fall from 5 to 0? Did it fall from, excuse me, did it fall from 100 to 95? You're giving me no frame of reference. So saying how much it decreased by doesn't, it's not enough information for me. Excuse me. Okay. On the other hand, the age group from 20 to 64, remove the word population, slightly increased from 51 to 54%. Okay, so that's better. Let me just check that quickly. 51 to 54%. Good. Similarly, for those age 65 plus, there was a little rise by 2%. So again, the same problem we discussed. If you're only going to tell me the size of the increase, I don't know where to start from. So I need a frame of reference. If you're going to say the size of the increase, you need to give me the first year so I know where I'm starting. But that is a way to increase the range of structures you're using. So instead of saying like this one went from 10% to 20%, you say this one started at 10% and increased by a further 10%. So it helps you to avoid repeating the same structures over and over again, but you have to include what that first year was. How many sentences should we use in the overview? Well, like let's say the overview and the paraphrase combined should be about 60 words, something like that. So if you go for the first paragraph is 60, the second paragraph is 60, the third paragraph is 60, that's going to bring you up to about 180 words. So that's the way to go. Rupender, you are very welcome. Okay, so it seems that's pretty much all we have time for today. Now, I know you probably think that I am very strict because, I mean, I'm not going to mince my words. I'm not going to say you've done a good job and then you don't get your IELTS scores. I'm going to tell you this is wrong and you need to fix it. That's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for, to tell you what you're doing wrong. And that's how you're going to improve your scores. So I hope you're taking it in the light that it is. I'm trying to help you improve your scores. I'm not, criticizing you for the sake of it. Okay, B, let's have a look at yours before we finish. Initially, the percentage of 0 to 19-year-olds experienced a slight decline from 44% in 1950, it was 50, not 59, to 39% in 2000. Good. Additionally, it is expected that this figure will drop by 12% in 2050. That's okay. But I would say a further 12% because we've just spoken about how it decreased, and now we're going to talk about how it's expected to increase more. So using the word further connects what happened in that first sentence with what's happening in the second sentence. So that would improve it. Also, keep in mind, we said we're going to discuss from 1950 to 2000 in the first paragraph, and then the predictions for the future in the second paragraph. So if you're writing it this way, you would have to go with the first age group and the second age group in the first details paragraph, then the third age group and the total population, the figures for total population in the second details paragraph. Dahlia, in 1950 and 2000, the population increase was 2.6 billion to 6 billion. Okay, and the percentage also increased from 5% to 7% for the 65 plus age groups and from 51 to 54% for the 20 to 60 age groups. So is that right? 51 to 54. Good. However, there was a decline in the 0 to 19-year-olds, the percentage of 0 to 19-year-olds from 44 to 39% in the same year. Okay, that's everything you needed in there. Good. 20 to 64. I didn't even notice that, but yeah, that would be important. But again, like, you're aiming to have time at the end to correct your mistakes. So when you're writing your full essay, error correction would be important. Remelin, thanks, sir. Here's my rewritten. Grateful for the feedback. Starting off with the age group 0 to 19-year-olds, it can be clearly seen that there is a marginal decline of their percentage from 44 to 29%. From 44 to 39%. So that percentage is wrong. So that's a problem. 50 years after 1950. That's a bit convoluted, but fine. On the other hand, the age group from 20 to 64 slightly increased from 51 to 54%. And I'd continue. You don't want to have. You seem to have a good grasp of the English language, so don't go for short one clause sentences. Try to add them together. So continue that by saying, and similarly for those aged 65 plus, there is a little. No, little is too informal. A small rise from 5% in 1950 to 7% in 2000. Yep. So that's much better. But what you're missing there is the total population. So you also needed the figures, these ones, 2.5 to 6. So without those, it wouldn't be logical to put them elsewhere, because we're already discussing 1950 to 2000. So you're not going to talk about the 3 categories from there to there, and then talk about the 3 categories for the predictions, and then move back and discuss the older age group, the older time frame, after we've already discussed the newer time frame. So that would be important as well. Talia, I saw that one, and you're very welcome. Okay, that seems to be it. Anyone have any questions or anything before we finish? As always, make sure to share my stuff, my materials, my page, my channel with anyone any friends you have doing the IELTS test, any family members, any colleagues, wherever it may be. But make sure to share complete test success with those people you know that also need help with the IELTS test. Okay, so looks like that's it. We'll leave it there for today, and I'll talk to you all either in my live feedback lesson earlier tomorrow on Zoom, or later in the day in my speaking live stream on YouTube and Facebook. Rupender, how to improve writing? Again, it just depends. It depends on what mistakes you're making. So you made some mistakes with the content of like how to structure and what content to include in a task 1 essay. So that's definitely something you need to work on. So it depends on the person. You know, if somebody might have perfect task achievement, perfect overview, all the data accurate and organized well, but you know, they got terrible grammar. So for that person, that's what they would need to focus on. So it's all about, you know, firstly understanding what to do, then try it, find out what you're doing wrong, take action on those mistakes, try again, find out what you're doing wrong, take action on those mistakes, and you just keep going, working on your weaknesses, working on your mistakes until there are few enough that you can get the score you need. You can still make, like, I recall you're aiming for a band 7. You can still make mistakes. You know, you can, there's still a margin of error that's acceptable for a band 7. So it's not that you have to become perfect. You just have to reduce the number of mistakes and improve your weaknesses enough to get that score. So yeah, it depends on the person. Okay, seems like that's it. Let's finish up for there. Talk to you all tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody.